Welcome, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of What's Your Story? And today we're going to be talking about design thinking and design mindset. For that, we have Shruti Mishra. Shruti is the head of total experience function at TCS. She leads experience transformation initiatives for enterprise IT products and services. She leads a dynamic team of design thinking consultants, designers, and content strategists. Shruti is a seasoned product manager, design thinker, and a lifelong learner. So, welcome, Shruti. Welcome to the call.
Thank you, Kanika, for having me. It's nice to be here, and I'm excited to share my knowledge with you and looking forward for this conversation.
You are a pro, and we know. So, with that, we're going to dive into it. So, the World Economic Forum at Davos every year comes out with a list of essential skills that are going to be relevant in times to come. And in 2030, the list that has come out for that talks about design thinking as being one of the quintessential skills that the world really needs. And I'm thinking, Shruti, that the world is trying to move away from always having the right answer to maybe also finding the right question. And wasn't it really Steve Jobs who said that design is not just how it looks and how it feels? Design is also how it works. And quite interestingly, yesterday evening I was sending a WhatsApp message to someone by mistake. I deleted it. And then I was so ashamed because that message still says, you have deleted that message for me to see and even that person to see. I'm not sure from a design mindset perspective, how effective was that? So, my question to you from your experience is that many organizations claim to be using design thinking, but what do most get wrong in actually applying it? What are your thoughts?
Okay. I feel, see, one of the biggest missteps in treating design thinking is like a checklist or a trend. So many people who approach us, so they come with a very pre-decided solution that I want this, and please do a reverse engineering, a process to validate it. So that's how it is right now. But the real design thinking is all about mindset. It's not just a methodology or process as such. And the biggest gap, what I feel personally, is ignoring the research, right? Understanding the user needs, right? Not doing the market research thoroughly. And also, sometimes we miss doing the usability testing, which is most important. And above all, practicing selective empathy, reaching out to only set of users you're comfortable talking to and
Hmm.
just validating your assumptions, right? So real design thinking is about constant iteration wherein you co-create solutions with them, challenging your assumptions and identifying the right problem and then solving it. I think the thing which you're talking about, is this the right problem which we are trying to solve? Are we heading
Hmm.
in the right direction or not? So I think that is what is needed now.
Very well described and can be a challenge sometimes because as a customer, when I come to you, I'm like, get me this
Correct.
because maybe that's my vision, maybe
Correct.
that's my brainchild, and I want to be proven right. And
Yes.
that's why I want you to just design it. But then the devil's advocate role that you have to play, Shruti, as a design thinker
Correct.
probably becomes so essential.
Yeah.
Very interestingly, you mentioned selective empathy. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, selective empathy in the sense that when we talk about design thinking, the first and foremost step what we talk about is understanding your stakeholders, right? So whatever project or engagement you are trying to do, try to understand who all are getting impacted by it. So when you're talking about selective empathy, you are not only reaching to a certain set of users, what you're looking at is there can be customers, there can be users, and their user itself, there are multiple users, right? There can be diverse set of users. Something like we miss out on global users sometimes, we miss
Yeah.
out on extreme users, some people who are not using your systems at all, right? And maybe the pwd users, right? How are they able to leverage your systems, right? So we miss out on those aspects. So that's the reason I was saying that selective empathy means we are comfortable with talking to a certain set of users, and we always reach out to them that, okay, I know this person, maybe I'll get some feedback from this person rather than looking at it holistically.
And how large do you think your demographic of these user profiling should be typically for a project or a product that you're creating? How wide do you typically would suggest people to go?
As wide as possible. See, there is no fixed answer to it, but mostly no. For any design thinking engagement, it all depends upon how much time do you get to solve this assignment. What we focus upon is obviously the diverse set, not restricting to a particular group. Yeah. So
So when you're designing, say, a program or you're doing this research, so do you have some categories or pillars that you keep in mind? So you may want to go out to, say, the public sector and the private sector. You want to look at men, women. Is there a generational dynamics breakup as well? You're like, I want at least 30% of Generation X or a 40% of that. So is there a number in mind, or is there a process in mind that you follow?
see, process definitely yes. We look at gender, we look at generation, we look at different cultures, we looked at people with all abilities. So these are the various aspects we definitely want to touch base upon. So we try to reach out to as many people or as many users as possible in this diverse group.
Very interesting. Now that you speak about this interesting thing you spoke about, which is all abilities, I'm very curious. A few days back, I was at a client site, Shruti, and so they gave me a punch-in card, and we were there for a conversation about how do we include more people with disability into this organization. So they gave me this card. I had to punch it. You know how high the card machine reader was placed? It was almost on, and I'm a very tall girl, right? It was almost at my eye level. So I was just thinking that how would somebody using a wheelchair be able to access this? So sometimes I think that you don't need auditors like us from the outside world to do a dip check into what's working. These audits about what's going to work, is this user friendly, sometimes can be so common, but sometimes can be completely missing. So my question to you is, how can design thinking be leveraged to build more equitable and inclusive products and services?
And this is the need of the hour. See, design thinking can drive inclusivity, and when we are intentionally designing for all cultures, language, abilities, and it starts by involving diverse users, as I was mentioning, from the beginning itself, not at just at the end, because sometimes it's more of a checklist wherein you try to involve users at the very end during the testing phase or also. What is important is you involve them from the beginning and ensure that we hear from the underrepresented voices across culture, language, abilities, and that is where is important. And something like see design choices like having alternate text, the color contrast what we are using, and building screen reader capabilities, right? They are not any optional features anymore. These are the quite essential features which is required for each of these digital applications what we talk about. So I think we have to start embedding this as a culture, right? That's where we can ensure that the products are welcomed by one and all.
Interesting that you speak about even small things like, color sensitivity should be
Correct.
borne in mind. Some days back, I was doing some work and I wrote it with a green pen on the board. That was what was available in front of me. And somebody kind of called it out. He said to me that, I have color. He didn't say I had color blindness, but he said I have color insensitivity, so I'm not able to read colors like red and green. Would you mind writing with a black? And for a moment, I felt so small, and I felt that I was probably non-inclusive in many ways. So sometimes these little things that we're like, I can see all the colors, how does it really matter?
Correct.
But I'm sensing it could actually have a huge impact on
And
people
can
around.
you see, we all have certain disability or other. Something like situational disability is one of the things which I wanted to add because you gave an example here. What happens is when you take your mobile out in the sun, so sometimes you're not able to read the screen as well. So that is also a kind of situational disability. So the color contrast, as simple as that, but it's very important and crucial, and it's helpful for one and everyone.
So true, so true. Let's do a quick rapid fire. I want to understand from you. We're going to go one by one.
Okay.
Give me an example of a bad user example. You're going to give one, and then I'm going to give one.
Bad user example. See, I won't pinpoint on any specific app or something, but having
Yeah.
so much information on a screen also sometimes it's very overwhelming. Okay. So it has to
Yeah.
be very clean. Sometimes white spacing also helps because, as I was mentioning, cognitive load has to be reduced, right? So you will see a better user engagement when the screen is effortless, it's very clean and simplistic.
Interesting. For me, the other day I had gone to pick up, money from my ATM machine, and I like those ATM machines which give me my card back before they give me my money. I am an old woman now and I have misplaced my card so many times. I just felt somebody thought about it, that just give me my card back first and you can keep dispensing the money. The other time I was doing a class at a college. I was teaching some students and I had about 120 students in my class, Shruti. And there was this girl, she was using two tables. So they had this small desk which has like that flap over to write stuff. She was using two desks. So I was very curious. I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "I am a left-handed and all the desks in the classrooms are right-handed, built in for right-handed students. Nobody ever thought that, can we in few desks at least keep the writing bit on the left?" So she was sitting on one desk and she was writing on the
Oh,
other one. But because I thought somebody probably had never thought that this could also be needed by somebody who is probably a left-handed as well.
correct, correct. Absolutely.
Little things sometimes.
Yes, yes. These are little things which matter some most.
And sometimes I'm thinking at a physical realm, things could be difficult to make for all abilities. But I'm sensing when we are looking at technological products,
Yeah.
that time to make it more inclusive should possibly be actually much easier. I'm sensing.
Yes,
So,
yes.
from your thought point of view, are there any technological advances where you felt, or any technological changes that you think organizations are making to make it more inclusive beyond what you already told me?
So the basic aspect is ensuring that accessibility is taken care from day one, right? And digital accessibility is at most important because you want to have wider acceptance with your users. How your systems are being accessible by anyone. So screen reader as an example, and one example is something like the voice, right? So text to voice feature or voice to text feature, what we have been using now,
Hmm.
everyone is very comfortable using that feature in WhatsApp, right? We send out voice messages to everyone, right? But that feature was in fact designed for a very specific set of people with
Hmm.
hearing disability, but it has been widely accepted by one and all. So if
Yeah.
you think beyond the basic assumption that okay, let's build something which I can use, is pretty much wrong. So you have to think what everyone can use it and it
Hmm.
will be widely accepted by everyone.
And it comes back to the inclusion process of you even if you need to fix it for one, you may choose to do it because you may never know you're helping everyone.
Correct.
And this example is really that helping, fixing for one but actually helping possibly
Everyone.
everyone.
Yeah.
So Shruti, when you take on a project, what are some of the top thoughts that come to your mind? How do you collect your thoughts together? If you have to create a roadmap of this is how we're going to address this, what are some of the things you keep in mind?
See, first and foremost, when we take up any project, right, we co create and collaborate with the team. It's not like we are working on silos and we are just giving an update that we are not doing that consultancy type of work. We are ensuring that they are involved from the day one, right? So that they understand what are the areas users are talking about, right? So the co-creation and collaboration aspect is very much important. So unless we get that commitment from the team, right, we don't take up the project because we don't want to commit on something wherein they are not feeling involved, right? And once they start seeing the results, right, that's where they see the impact, right? So for us, it's very important any design thinking engagement. First and foremost, we understand why they are trying to do, for whom they are trying to do it, because they are most focused on how we do it, how do we solve this problem, but they don't know for whom they are trying to solve this problem and what is the problem. So that what part is also important and for whom we are trying to do is also important. So
Yeah.
for such, the initial conversation is to understand whether we understand, are we solving the right set of problem or not, then deep diving into ideation, all those design thinking, we have a set of processes which we follow. So that comes next, but understanding why we are doing it, for whom we are doing it, and the how part is the later aspect which we figure out later.
Interestingly, I was reading somewhere that David Kelly was the father of design thinking, right? He was a founder of IDEO, and then he was also the D School founder at the Stanford University. But then I also reread a little bit to say that Herbert Simon, who was a Nobel laureate, was actually the first one who wrote a book called The Science of Artificial.
Okay.
That was actually 1969.
Oh,
that far away. So
Correct.
I'm sensing with this entire advent of AI coming in, TCS, of course, is a very large enterprise, but I'm sensing design thinking can happen in smaller teams, product teams, newer startups as well. So, what would be your recommendation to young folks out there or older folks out there? Age is not the bar, for how can they leverage without the tools and machinery? Of course, TCS is a giant, but what are some of your recommendations?
See, design thinking, you don't need any fancy tools to begin with. No, as small as you need to focus on quick wins, okay? And one thing is what you can do is we all do brainstorming, right? So, couple of people getting into a room, trying to understand what is it, what is not working well, and all. So, once you start empathizing with the users and your customers and your stakeholders, so start small. So, look at what are the things which will give you quick wins, okay, and focus on collaboration with people around you. Try to understand, brainstorm a lot, and then go to the ideation phase thinking about solution and all. So don't jump into solutioning more directly, but the small things, that's what I'm saying, just understanding your user base, understanding your stakeholder needs itself is a pretty much big step towards solutioning. Okay. So you don't
Right.
need to have fancy tools. You can
Oh,
just
it's a
work around with, yes, you can
mindset.
just work around with the people around you and whatever you have with you.
And a very inherent need to be wanting to solve a problem,
Correct.
and being okay with the ambiguity that it's going to entail while you're actually solving the problem. I'm sensing. So if you're somebody who's very stuck to finding the right answer too soon, that need that I need to
Correct.
get it right versus to saying, okay,
And
I'm going
failing
to go.
fast is also important, Kanika, because what we do is we have a solution in mind and we want to go ahead with that. So it's okay. You have to validate your assumption. It's not working, dump it, go ahead, do the iteration again and again to understand and validate your assumption. So it's very important that have an open mindedness. This process might be time consuming because you will have to validate it again and again, reach out to users, understand, confirm your understanding before you can proceed. Yeah.
So how long has any of your projects lasted? If you had to give me an idea, ballpark.
See, from 1 month to we have done it for 8 months, for a year as well. But we nowadays what we are trying to do is we are looking at iterative process. So we don't go for a very time consuming process because AI is helping us a lot. So the research work which was taking earlier 6 to 7 weeks, right now it's compassing in of 2 to 3 weeks. So I think within a fair time of 5 to 6 weeks, we are able to deliver any DT engagements with all of our empathy findings, research findings, and all of it. Quick.
Sometime back I was working with a very large engineering institute. So they had an incubation center, and there was this young set of boys who were talking to the professor saying, we're going to go and write the codes. That's what the person said. So the professor looked at him and he said, you don't write the codes, first go find out how many codes already exist. So I found that in conversation very interesting. So I asked the professor, I said, why are you not letting them write the codes? That's their job, right? So he said, Kanaka, before you go on designing something, it's sometimes so imperative that you understand what are you already sitting on.
Correct.
So I asked him, I said, what do you call this? He said, I call this the mobilize phase, which comes even before the empathy, it even comes before ideation, is to go out there, mobilize what already exists, and then to say, okay, I've got this. Then look at the product and say, what is the empathetic lens that I need to? And then maybe I'll ideate and I'll go to the next stage. What are your thoughts on this, Shruti?
So I think it's a very important point that understanding your ecosystem, right? It's very important, right? So we call it as ecosystem, wherein we put a substantial amount of effort to understanding what is the as is process, what is the as is systems, right? What are the things which are being impacted? So understanding the environment is very much important, right? So the users are also driven by the environment. So you will behave in a very particular way in your office environment, but in your personal space at home you will behave very differently, right? So understanding the ecosystem, the environment is very important and crucial for the design thinking. So before empathy, you also need to do that ecosystem wherein you understand how is it working today, what is not working well, what is working well. So we also
Yeah.
do that seed and weed. What is it which needs to be improved? What is it which is not working well? So there are a lot of concepts within design thinking which we work upon.
Very, very interesting. You mentioned there are a lot of concepts out there. So if you had to give a like a understanding to people, or what are some of the top models that are used, or if you have any book recommendations, if you're looking at a short course to understand design thinking, what would that really be?
See, IDEO is definitely one and recommended by everyone. So that is something, that framework is followed by one and all. So design thinking as such, if you see, there are five process, but not followed in a linear fashion. It's non-linear and you can iterate the steps again and again. So definitely we start with empathy, wherein we try to understand the ecosystem, try to connect with various stakeholders, understand the environment, trying to understand their pain areas, their
Yeah,
demographics, and all of it, right? So that is a very important and crucial step in design thinking. So this step has to be done very cautiously, because you need to understand who are your
yeah,
users, your consumers, your stakeholders. So there can be your primary stakeholders, secondary stakeholders who are influencing the project. So there are a lot of influencers as well, right? So that stakeholder matrix, who are priority, and all those things has to be taken into considerations, right? So after the empathy phase comes the define phase, wherein you define the problem statement. So that's where you try to understand that, okay, you have done the empathy with a lot of personas, and each of the personas have different problem statements to be addressed at. So we'll define and refine the problem statement here, that how do we solve this problem? Who are our users? What are the business outcomes we are looking at? So there we also do a lot of affinity to understand these are the common problem areas which everyone is talking about. And also we try to prioritize the problem statement, because not all problem statement are worth solving. I also give an example of Pareto example, wherein if you focus on those 20% of the problem, right, which will give you 80% impact, focus on that. So the high impact ones, right? So there are some metrics which we use for defining the prioritization for all this problem statement. So we pick up the high prioritized one, and once we have done it, then only we go to ideation phase, wherein it can be done through various tools. So there are a lot of tools available. Raxer again is there. You have lots and lot of tools, but as simple as having a brainstorming exercise also will suffice, right? So we have crazy eight, wherein we as a team or as an individual we generate a lot of crazy ideas within a minute's time. So that also works well, right? So once you have done with the ideations, then again idea prioritization also can be done. You can look at the ideas affinity to see what is it which you want to pick it up, and then comes a prototype and testing phase. So this is again not a regular phase. Sometimes you will have to go back to the empathy phase, or you have to go back to the define phase to refine your problem statement or to confirm your understanding, right? And the usability testing, when we talk about going back to the users to test it whether it's working fine, do you think that this will work, right? This will address your problem statement, is also important. So as
interesting.
such, it's all non-linear, and it
Yeah.
can be repeated as many number of times till the time you're satisfied that okay, this is good to go.
Is there a ratio proportion to how many people you will prototype the product with as compared to the ones you had done in the initial stage of understanding the ecosystem? So, if there is a number in mind that you keep,
No, nothing
no,
like
not
that,
really.
correct?
It's specific to the product that you're
Correct.
pursuing.
Products, and see, there are user base you have to look at. So not all products, at least from the enterprise IT perspective, not all products are mass usage products. There are some
Yeah.
products meant specifically for a user group. So depending upon, there are a lot of aspects and parameters linked to it. So there is no fixed count for that.
So, if you had to pinpoint on this model of five, on one thing that you often feel if you don't focus right on that, that can lead to an entire debacle of the entire process, which one would that be? Is it the empathy phase? Is it getting the right idea? Is it defining it well? So, which one do you think is most important if you had to rate them?
Everything is linked, Kanika, but unless you do that empathy phase correct, right? Unless
Okay.
you understand the need of the users, right? Then anything, whatever you build, everything will fail. So you need to focus a lot on understanding the users. Either you do it through interviews, focus group connects, through surveys, or do you research, quantitative, qualitative research, whatever you want to do. So your
Hmm.
empathy is the base, but again, most of the time, sometimes we don't have to start from the beginning of empathy. If you have done, you have enough information about your users, your user needs and all, you can also
Yeah.
directly start with defining the problem statement. Or you are, if you are aware that okay, you have defined the problem statement, then you can move to the ideation. But again, problem statement definition will only work when you know the user base correctly.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So their needs is important.
And that makes me ask you this, that when you're defining the concern, do you make it as elaborative as possible? Or what is the recommendation here?
See, what we do is we reach out to various personas and we work on empathy maps. Sometimes we plot their user journey as well, understanding what are their highs and lows in their journey. So we look at their valleys, we look at their peaks, and then we focus on those peaks which are not working well, right? This can be a dip also, right? The valleys point wherein you need to focus upon. So as simple as that, nothing fancy again, but very important to understand the user journey, what is working well for them, what is not working well for them.
Okay, so defining it and empathizing it becomes
Correct.
essential.
And that's how when they see the impact, when they see what is happening around, and then it doesn't just remains a buzzword, it becomes a habit. In this way, they also experience the impact firsthand. And once the habit is built, right, so I think the involvement automatically comes from each and every one.
And I'm also sensing the thrill of creating something altogether new, reinventing the wheel. So I'm sensing, would it be fair to say that with design mindset, we are moving a little bit away from stability more into agility?
Correct.
And then how do you make that agility more sounding stable?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's probably the direction. So I'm going to give you two-sided answers, maybe binary, and I don't know how easy or difficult it is to put things in binary, but if you had to choose one, and I know this is a force fit for you, what would you choose? So do you think design mindset is more about aesthetics, or is it about making it effortless? Between the two, if you had to choose one side, and I know I'm doing a sin by asking you to choose between the two, but which do you think you pay more attention? Is it the aesthetics of it, or is it the effortlessness of the product that comes out of it?
So definitely effortlessness, because good design should feel invisible. So you don't have to think twice before working on anything. And see, also what happens, Kanika, is people think that aesthetics is something very flashy visuals and all
Mm.
of those things, right? So that is not true. Okay, and Google, I will quote Google example only because it's a beautiful example of minimalistic design. One
Hmm.
search bar and tons of white spaces. It's aesthetic and even simplistic. So I
Yeah.
think it's also very effortless for a user to do any search in Google. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Coming back to the point you made earlier, I want my cognitive load to come down, and
correct,
I'm looking at effortlessness versus probably just beautiful looking.
correct.
Would you rather go for long lasting or timeless if you had to choose one?
Timeless.
Okay.
Again, it's rooted in principles which will stay relevant, I think, for a long, long time. Again, it's more or less linked, but I think if it's timeless, something like safety pin, for an example, Kanika, the other day I was reading, it was designed and developed sometime during 1860s or something, right? And it's still relevant. The design is still relevant. It has not changed over the ages,
Yeah.
right? So
So
it's
timeless.
timeless.
Interesting. Would you rather have exclusive designs or would you rather have inclusive designs?
Okay. So here, definitely, hands down, it's inclusive, because true innovation is only when everyone is able to use it and access it seamlessly, right? So you need to build it very inclusive. But sometimes, again, exclusivity comes when you are trying to do something very exclusive for users, something like Apple products, right? They're
Yeah.
very exclusive. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I think the focus has to be on inclusivity at any
Yeah.
point of time.
I don't know. Okay, Shruti, so I have last one for you. Tell me, what would you choose, environment friendly or user friendly?
Okay, so see, if your product is not user friendly, right, then unless they are not able to use your product, the environment friendly will come late at the later point of time, right? So you need to have a user friendly UI for the
Hmm.
first thing you need to focus upon, and then
Hmm.
only you can guide the users to make greener choices, right? So the other aspect comes later. The first is definitely user friendly.
And I think all that we've discussed so far should lead into the user interface being more conducive. And that's when I'm happy to use a greener energy as well.
And then the sustainability aspect, environment friendliness, all those things comes later. But again, that mindset has to be there. Yeah, yes, you are building sustainable products. You are ensuring that you have environment friendly UI. But first and foremost is definitely user friendly.
And as a design thinker, do you focus more on little design? Are you trying to minimalize it or are you trying to maximize the design? So between the two, if you had to choose one, which is the direction that's calling out to you all the time?
For me, it's always minimalistic, because I don't want to have so much features or overwhelm the users with so much things on a page that they're confused. So the cognitive load, which I've been highlighting again and again, it's very much important, right? So
Um,
minimalistic at any point of time.
So that is essential. There is so much we spoke about. I'm just trying to summarize it, but there's so much we spoke about: cognitive load, accessibility, collaborate versus consult. I thought that was a gem to talk about. A lot of time we feel, oh, now that the project has come to me, I'm going to be the be all of it. And
Correct.
that's probably not the right way to go, especially when you're looking designing something. It's a co-creation process that
Correct.
you really talked about. Some of your last thoughts about for someone who is trying to make themselves be known as a designing specialist, right? Because sometimes people may not have fancy titles of being a design thinker, right? But they may have to incorporate designing in the process. So if you had to give last one or two tips that you want to give at an individual basis to people, not at an organizational level,
Yeah.
for me, Kanika, what would that really be?
So you need to have a very open mindset or innovation mindset, right? And you are willing to fail fast. You're willing to spend that time with the people around you, understanding the problem statement. I think these are the very basic rules
Hmm.
of getting into design thinking mindset, right? So the mindset plays a very important role, right? Because unless you have that mindset, right, that okay, I'm trying to solve something, I'm trying to solve a problem, and I need to know what is that right problem to solve. And the final quote will be: the best design feels good,
Yeah.
it does good, and it lasts forever. So think
Yeah.
from that perspective and have that mindset, open mindset, to build something innovative which will be acceptable by one and all,
And I'm
irrespective of
here.
their abilities or culture or anything else.
And I'm hearing you say that it does not matter whether you're in HR, you could be a finance person looking at design thinking in your process and not saying, I'm the governor of my process, but going a little bit beyond and being empathetic to your stakeholder. You could be in supply chain to
Yeah.
understand the bottleneck process. You could be in any support ancillary department as well. And even a salesperson for that instance
Yes.
to understand, can I have that design mindset? So I'm sensing it's more like a life skill, not really just a professional skill. And I'm thinking that empathy goes a long way in my personal relationships as well. So you can be quite literally the designer of your own life.
Absolutely, Kanika, and that's what I say to everyone, that design thinking is not limited to IT professional or for digital products or something. It's meant for one and all. So I've been conducting sessions for a lot of people in academia, and I've been conducting sessions for everyone around us, be it HR, finance team, and sales, and everyone, and they have seen that value. Even at
Yeah.
home, at work, everywhere I've used it, and it has worked wonderfully for me. So I would
Hmm.
suggest everyone to develop this mindset, which will help them to navigate through a lot of challenges in their life.
Interesting. So to sum up, I'm sensing that design thinking is not linear. It's very iterative. It's very dynamic. And instead of trying to find the right answer, you're trying to ask all the right questions to do your right diagnostic.
Yeah.
I heard you say start with people. I heard you say prototype boldly, iterate often again and again, and never stop learning. I'm thinking that our podcast comes to an end, but thank you so much, Shruti, for your time. I learned so much in the process. I am so grateful for your presence today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kanika, for having me. I had a blast shooting for this podcast, and it was a lovely conversation. Thank you.